All right, so we're finally connected to YouTube, and let's just get underway. I know we probably a lot of people may have been lost or never you didn't see us, so they probably got lost. But let's get going, inshallah, and we'll just see what happens from there, inshallah. Alrighty, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi man wala. First of all, we have to apologize for the delay. For some reason, after probably 100 Zoom to YouTube streams, the 101st one, chose not to work after these last 60 days of being on Zoom multiple times a day. But for some reason, today it happened to stall on us, so we had to run over to StreamYard, which I'm sure makes some people happy, like Ali bin Saad, who's like Mr. StreamYard. He loves his StreamYard, and he's been singing the praises of StreamYard for so long. But here we are on StreamYard to advertise for, or to discuss for you, and really advertise this next coming term, and make it known to people what we're doing, inshallah ta'ala. And let me start off by telling you basically what the concept is. And the concept is, instead of people registering for individual classes for each term, we just made it one big package. And instead of people registering for every term, right, we made that simple, and it's simply a subscription of once a month. And then that you just continue for the entire year. And then instead of as well basically not having anything to do in between terms, we have plenty of pre-recorded classes that students can take. All right, so that's the concept here. And the bigger picture is that we're all online, and we all need to do something good with our time online. We need to be using the internet proactively, and we need to use it in a way that's going to testify for us on Yawm al-Qiyamah instead of against us. So that's the concept of what we're trying to do here with Safina Society. Safina Society now slowly, we have a lot more contributors. We have a lot of nice young guns with us. We have some veterans. We have some people who are behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. And inshallah, the whole purpose of it is to create an online community, since we are all online, and establish with this online community something continuous and something beneficial for everybody. All right, so that's the idea, is that it'd be something continuous that is not just a one-off thing. And that's where we need institutions. And institutions are things that I know some people, they don't like when institutions get a little formal, but things have to be formal. Things have to be you have to have institutions. The strength of an ummah, the strength of a nation, is that it has institutions. If you look back, Al-Azhar what was it? It's an institution. How did the Ottomans get so strong? It's because they institutionalized. Things were not afterwards in the time of the Abbasids, in the time of Salah ad-Din, in the times of all these great people, and also in the times of Al-Azhar and these colleges, Al-Qarawiyyin. It was not like the time of the Prophet ﷺ, in that it was like a startup. It was informal. Everyone just grab whatever weapon you have and go fight. Or the classes that were informal. It can't continue to be like that. It's got to become, as Surah As-Saff says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِهِ صَفًّا كَأَنَّهُمْ بُنْيَانٌ مَرْصُوصٌ. All right, saffan, in order, in rows, systematized, كَأَنَّهُمْ بُنْيَانٌ مَرْصُوصٌ, marching one step at a time. And that's what we want to do, but our realm is ilm, not the battlefield. It's the realm of ilm. And so we want to institutionalize we want to make this effort and this work, which oftentimes was pretty simple and informal, into a strong institution. And that institution will be operating, inshallah, online through the Arkview program. And the Arkview program is, as I said before, and I'll just repeat it for those who are just getting on now. And again, we apologize for the delay. We just had that 1 in 1,000 situation where we couldn't get on through Zoom. But we've looked at what we do, and then we've try to simplify it each time. And what did we find? We found that you were signing up for classes each individually, signing up for classes individually. And we realized like that's like a hassle for the family. It's a hassle. It's a time hassle. And we realized people are signing up for classes every semester. They got to pull out their information, type it in every single semester. So what we realized is let's just make it a single package, and it's a one-time sign up. All right. Now that left us with a little bit of a gap. Like what happens between semesters, right? What do you do between semesters? Well, between semesters, we've put on plenty of pre-recorded classes, so that even when you don't have your live classes, when we're between terms, you have pre-recorded classes. So now that actually makes things much easier for the student and for the user. That you sign up once, okay? You get everything, the whole household. We were having people signing up one class for the mom, one class for the dad, one class for the middle child, one class for the baby. It's too much. We made it all one package for everybody. And that's the concept. And we're calling that Arkview. And then we divide it into 2 tracks. One is called Arkview, one is called Arkview Plus. So Arkview Foundations is everything except for scholarship track classes. Arkview Plus is everything including the scholarship track classes. Okay. And this term we are offering 2 scholarship track classes, which are Mufti Niaz's Hadith class, which he's going to discuss, and my continuation of the Hikam class. Now, this system also allows for that other problem that we had, which is what happens when a class takes part 2, part 3, part 4, right? And you're just signing into part 4. How do you get part 2? So that's where the pre-recorded element comes in. And all the pre-recorded classes are in myarkview.org. So you can come in at any time, and then between semesters, or during if you're ambitious, you can go back and catch up on all of the classes that you missed at myarkview.org. Myarkview.org is also the place where you're going to ultimately register and operate. Now, some nitty gritty. Where do you people actually, how does it actually work? You actually works that you sign up on myarkview.org, and then that will direct you to joining an Arkview Google Classroom. And on the Google Classroom is where you're going to get all the notifications and all the links that you need for your live classes. All right, most of which will be on Zoom. Okay, so some of the scholarship classes may be on YouTube, unlisted or private for the students. Okay, but all of that information will be given to you on the through the Arkview Classroom. You could also communicate through us through a WhatsApp group. Every student who signs up can join a WhatsApp group for quick information, quick announcements, anything like that. If you have a question, you could ask it there. All right, so today we're going to go over our 7 classes, and we'll meet each of the instructors. Okay, so let's start with myself. I'm going to be teaching a class that'll be on the foundations. It will be on the foundations section of the of Arkview, and it's going to be Introduction to Arabic Grammar. It's going to be the introduction to words, conjugations, sentences, and common constructions. Right? That's 4 elements. Again, the nature of words, right? The conjugations of verbs, sentence structures, and common constructions such as noun, adjective, phrases, mudaf, mudaf ilay, all right, jar wa majroor, okay, prepositional phrases, al-munada, when you call to somebody, how you talk to them, how to give an exception to something, you know, like all of these except this, all of these common, very common constructions. So we also read. So we have a grammar portion, and then we have a reading portion in which the students themselves will read and be corrected, and we'll talk about the grammar. And we have some decent selection of readings going from very simple to a little bit more complicated. So that's my first class, and that meets twice a week. All of this you can see on a brochure. If you go to the live chat, you'll see the link for that brochure. Okay. The next class that I'm teaching is Sundays. I'm teaching the Hikam of Ibn Atta'illah part 2. We already did part 1. And now I'll be doing part 2 of the Hikam of Ibn Atta. The Hikam of Ibn Atta is one of the most important books, I would say, and it's all of Islamic scholarship, particularly the subject matter of tasawwuf. If you had to choose 2 works for tasawwuf, you pretty much, I would believe that the vast majority of scholars would choose Ihya Ulumuddin and Hikam ibn Ata'illah al-Iskandari. Those are the 2 books that if you had to pick 2 books, you'd pick those 2 books. And really, it's 1 and 1A, right? It's really very hard to choose which one you would rather have, because the Hikam, although it's shorter, you can extrapolate so much from the Hikam of Ibn Ata'illah al-Iskandari. So those are my 2 classes. And let me now shift over and introduce Mufti Niaz and bring him on. Okay. All right, Mufti Niaz. All right, now let's figure this out here.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam, Mufti. How are you? Can you hear?
Okay,
Mufti, is your mic working?
Clear? Yes. Is my
All right,
sound
good. All right, so Mufti, tell us about the Hadith. Mufti is going to be teaching a Hadith with a little bit of commentary. And most importantly, he's going to transmit to you his Ijaza and tell you some stories about his classes. So Mufti, tell us about when you studied the class that you're teaching. Who did you study with? Where were you? And tell us a little bit about that.
We are going to be going through, inshallah, with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is known as the Thulathiyat of Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi. It is a hadith course with Ijaza, and I'll explain what all that is in a moment. So very quickly, just so that we know what we're talking about, hadith are the traditions of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Among what we want to just remember is that hadith are crucial. They are commentary of the Qur'an. They are a source of the Sunnah and legal tradition in Islam. And as we know, they were formally compiled into books and collections after the life of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're going to be going into more depth in the class, but for now, just as part of this introduction and overview to the course, every hadith has 2 parts, what we refer to as matan, the text, and the isnad, the chain. So the matan is the actual wording, report of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the isnad is the unbroken chain of transmission between the compiler of the hadith collection and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So for example, we are looking at Bukhari, so between Imam Bukhari rahimahullah up to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in this class, we will be specifically looking at the Thulathiyat of Imam Bukhari, not all couple thousand of his narrations, just the Thulathiyat. Now, what we refer to when we say Thulathiyat from the number 3, Thulathiyat are those specific hadith that have only 3 chains between the compiler and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So an example of a Thulathi hadith is the following here. Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi narrates from Makki ibn Ibrahim, who narrates from Yazid bin Abi Ubaid, who narrates from Salah bin Aqwa radiyallahu anhu, who said that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I heard him say, Man lam yaqul alayya ma lam aqul, man yaqul alayya ma lam aqul, falyatabawwa maq'adahu minan nar. Whoever attributes to me anything that I have not said, then let that person take their place in the punishment in the hereafter. So Imam Bukhari narrates this in his Sahih hadith number 109 in Kitab al-Ilm. The benefit in this is that the Thulathiyat, because there's only 3 links between Imam Bukhari and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this example, the chain is shorter. And because the chain is shorter, right, the muhaddithin consider those hadith starting off by default as being more authentic than a chain that is longer. There's more of a possibility for something to happen to, not make the hadith so authentic. So this hadith class that we're going to be doing, we're going to focus more on the chain and the commentary of those who are in the chain. The study of the isnad of the hadith is critical when we're talking about the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Abdullah ibn Mubarak, rahimahullah, very famously, Imam Muslim has recorded this in his Muqaddamah, the introduction to his Sahih. He narrates this statement from Muhammad bin Abdullah bin Quhzad, from Abdan ibn Uthman, from Abdullah ibn Mubarak. So Imam Muslim traces this statement to Abdullah bin Mubarak through these teachers. He says, Al-isnadu min ad-din, walawla al-isnadu laqala man sha'a ma sha'a. The isnad, the chain of transmission, is from the deen. If it were not for the isnad, anybody could say whatever they wanted to. We know where we are getting our Qur'an from, our qira'at, the different pronunciations, the variations, the mushaf that has been transmitted. We know where we are getting it from. This unbroken chain from teacher to student, back to the Sahaba, back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Any matter of deen, any matter of knowledge of the deen, we need to be able to trace it back to the author, trace it back to the person who said it originally. In this case, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What we want to do in this course is Ijaza. Ijaza is formal permission given by a teacher to a student at the end of the class to teach the text or teach the curriculum, or like we said, transmit the qira'at with regards to the Qur'an or hifz or hadith, etc. So in this class, we will be listening to the recitation of the 22 thulat. Imam Bukhari, in his collection, he has 22 such hadith which have only 3 links between him and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we will read the complete Arabic text and give English translation of the isnad, the chain, and the matan, the text of each hadith. We will give commentary on the narrators in the chains of the hadith. We will briefly also comment on the actual hadith, and we'll go over some basic principles of the science of hadith. And after completing the class, inshallah, ijaza, permission to narrate will be given to those who attend the first time of class. Like I finished as my study of the complete Sahih of Imam Bukhari back in the year 2011 from my teacher, Mufti Abdul Samad Ahmad, in Blackburn in UK. Alhamdulillah, the greatest year of my life. We make dua, may Allah reward and preserve and bless with good health and afiyah all of our teachers, those who are with us and those who are no longer with us. May Allah fill their graves with nur, and may Allah count us among the sincere seekers of knowledge and among the sincere students of knowledge, and all good is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I look forward to teaching this class. Hopefully it'll be a very, very authentic experience from the tradition and a lot of fun. It's a topic that I'm very passionate about, and hopefully we will benefit, and all good is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Thank you very much, Mufti, and I'm looking forward to attending this class myself. So Jazakallahu khairan for that, and I look forward to your comments on the individual hadiths as well as the ijaza itself. So Jazakallahu khairan. Thank you for your time, and look forward to starting next Sunday, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khair. Okay. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to Safina, inshallah.
All right, next up we have a special person who was on this with me last time, and here he is today, mashallah. Ashir Adrian Kirk is an old friend from Connecticut, and he's with us again, and it's a pleasure for me to have him involved in our organization, even if it's online and not in person. But he's out in Memphis, Tennessee, and he'll be doing the Tajwid, and he is a ashiq of Tajwid. He loves the science of Tajwid, and inshallah, when you take this class with him, it's actually going to rub off on you, that love of Tajweed. So inshallah. So let me hand it over to Ashir. Again, let's start by telling us, something about when you started off, and what was the school like that you went to in Morocco? What was the Tajweed life like, and the hifz life, I should say. It's more that you were living that life of hifz every single day, all day, just hifz.
Yeah. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi man wala. So, my Tajweed journey started in Syria and Damascus, where I spent about 4 years. And, Syria is known for, their Tajweed scholars, as well as, the Arabic language among other things, but those two were kind of like two of their really biggest strengths, if you will. And so Tajwid was just like readily available, like everywhere. And all the masajid, pretty much, they had shuyukh, I mean, everywhere, mashallah. You could find people to teach Tajwid. And one thing that I found that was really awesome and amazing about the scholars of Sham was just, they were just so open and just so giving with their time, right? And so one example, two of my teachers, one of my teachers, my main teacher was Sheikh Anas al-Hibri in Syria. And then my second teacher was Sheikh Samir al-Nas, Dr. Samir al-Nas. And both of them would come to the masjid in the morning after Fajr and teach for about 3 hours straight, right after Fajr, right after the adhkar and everything like that, about 3 hours straight, anywhere from 75 to like 100 students or so. They would sit and they would listen. And keep in mind, you got all these students there, and you know, you sit there for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on when you showed up or whatever. And most of it was listening, which was very interesting, right? By the time you started to read, by the time you got to read, you might have only read for, you know, maybe 5 minutes, you know, 10 maybe at the most if you were like a really advanced student reading a lot. But that was it. And then the rest of the time was spent literally listening to other people recite, make mistakes, and get corrected. And that was just an absolutely phenomenal experience. And so from there, so you go in the morning. In the afternoon, between like Dhuhr and Asr time, you could go to their places of work. So Dr. Samir has a medical clinic. He would literally teach classes at his medical clinic between patient visits. MashaAllah, right? I personally experienced this myself along with a friend of mine. Going there and you wait until he's available. You go into his office, sitting right at his desk. Just open your book, start reading, and he'll stop you and start explaining, and so on and so on and so forth. If you got a phone call, you pause, take the call. If you got a patient, hold on, wait a second, go out, you do what you need to do, come back, continue the class. Sheikh Anas, he owned a tire shop and a children's clothing store. So we'd go to his clothing store around Dhuhr Asr time. Same thing in his office, read to him. If he has something to do, he'd come back, blah, blah, blah. And then in the evening, around Isha, after Isha time, Sheikh Anas opened his home up, and you could go to his home all in the same day. You could see him at the masjid, go to his shop, and then go to his home in the evening, all just to do tajweed and hifd as well. Well, it was hifd and tajweed for most, and some were only doing tajweed. And so this was the experience of studying in general in Syria. Mashallah, was the most amazing experience. I personally haven't seen it anywhere else on this level, but I'm sure there are some shuyukh around the world who probably also do this, like the Habaib in Yemen. I know they do something similar. And so that was my journey in Syria. As for Morocco, you know, they have the Madaris Atiqa, the traditional Qur'an schools. I was in a small town called Qalat Saragna, about an hour or so outside of Marrakesh, and it was, you know, typical Qur'an school experience. You know, you memorize it every day. The only difference is they did the boards. So we actually wrote the ayat on a board. They call it a lawh, right? In Arabic, lawh, alwah. You write it. The ink is made out of like, you know, a burnt sheep's wool. They got from a very specific part of the sheep. They would burn it until it turns into charcoal, and then crumble it into like dust, and then mix it with water. It was actually kind of oily, which was interesting. And they put a sponge at the bottom of a jar and pour the ink over the sponge so that, you know, it would absorb it. And you made pens out of bamboo that you cut into the shapes of pens and so on. And then it would make little canals or whatever in the pen to make it absorb the ink. And then the sheikh would dictate on you. You would write and then repeat what you wrote to them and stop where he stopped, and then he would continue, and you would do like that. Then you would pass the board to him once you were finished. He would make sure you didn't make any writing errors. He would make any corrections, pass it back to you. Then you recited to him, and then he listened to make sure that he didn't miss anything. And it was this like back and forth, absolutely amazing. Then you would go off and memorize the whole day. And then when you were finished, you'd come back, turn the board to face him, and recite, from memory. You made a mistake, you had to go back and fix it. If not, you wash the board off and then you let it dry, and then you started the same process over the next day. And throughout the day, you just kind of reviewed along with other people. And so that was a bit of my experience, alhamdulillah. Although I have to say, I started in the US with Sheikh Ahmed Lamfaddal in Connecticut. So, alhamdulillah. So on to the course. So I can share my screen too, right? That was
yeah.
So let me see here. Let me see, application window. I think that's the document there. You guys can see my screen? You guys can see my screen? Dr. Shadee?
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, all right. So first things first, the course materials. Oh, sorry, the last thing is I here in the US, I studied with Sheikh Abu Salman, Sheikh Muhammad al-Ubaisi. That was in Ohio, and he gave like Ijazat and stuff like that. And so for people familiar with him and that community up there, that's where I got the Ijazas from, was from him. So the course materials and the requirements, pretty simple and straightforward. Number one, you have to already be able to read Arabic with a certain level of proficiency, right? Doesn't mean you have to know, it doesn't mean you have to be like, the most perfect reader and not stumble or stammer at all whatsoever. You can have some stammering, some stumbling, that's fine. But my point is it can't be a situation where, the student still is kind of mixing up fatha, kasra, dhamma, shadda, sukoon, ba with this letter, that letter, mixing up letters. It's kind of like you got to kind of get that stuff in order before coming to the class, because it will slow you down a whole lot if you have to kind of keep up with, just finishing up learning how to read along with, learning tajweed and how to pronounce everything and so on and so forth, right? And so we're gonna, so you got to have the ability to read Qur'an proficiently with little to no assistance at all whatsoever, inshallah. Then the next thing is a Uthmani script Qur'an. That's the ones that's like the ones that come out of Saudi, right? Or anyone that matches that script, right? The reason is because that script actually has tajweed built into the script. I wish I would have put an example in this document about that too. But for example, even the fathatan, kasratan, dhammatan, they're written differently according to what rule should be applied to it. So for instance, those of you who have a little bit of background, idhar would have a fathatan or kasratan that's perfectly aligned. They're like perfectly lined up, right? They're right there. And then like ikhfa and idgham, for example, the fathatan, kasratan would be kind of offset. It would not be perfectly aligned, it'd be offset. And these are things that they did intentionally to help the reader be able to identify certain rules visually as well, right? And then the dhammatan, so on and so forth, has the dhamma with the line versus the two dhammas. These are all according to the tajweed rules. So the Uthmani script has tajweed built into the script, whereas the South Asian script, like the Urdu-like script, Persian script or whatever, I don't know the official name for it, but that one does not have tajweed built into the script. And so it really helps to have that Uthmani mushaf. And when I say dedicated mushaf, what I mean is you want to use the same one for all classes. It's just better, it's just better to use it, just for the sake of consistency and, page number being the same, placement of the verses all in the same place. So, so it's not cause any confusion, later on. And so I really do recommend a dedicated mushaf that you bring to every single class, inshallah. The next thing is, I said bundles of humility, right? It takes a lot of humility to really get through tajweed. It's a real good way to like shatter one's nafs and really tame one's nafs. Why is that? Because we start off with the bare bones basics, right? And when you've been doing something for so long, like reciting Qur'an, reciting Surah Fatiha, for example, and then someone says, all right, now let's start with Fatiha. Number one, you got to have some humility to be like, all right, bet, let's start with Fatiha. Bismillah. Most people are like, well, I think I know Fatiha, right? Like, well, let's see. Let's see how well you know Fatiha. So we start with Fatiha, you recite that, and we go from there, right? And so that's number one. But then if you start to realize, oh wow, I'm making mistakes. I made a second mistake. I made a third, fourth, fifth. Oh my God, my Fatiha is all messed up, and I've been Muslim my whole entire life. Relax, it's okay. It's okay, right? But you gotta be, I gotta have a certain level of humility to be able to to be able to handle that. You got to be okay with that. You know what I'm saying? And then finally, just that repetition. Go back, do it again. Go back, do it again. It just takes some humility to do that. And the next one I said, mad patience, right? That's just me, like, just being funny, right? A lot of patience. You got to have a whole lot of patience, because it may be that you don't perfect your Fatiha for months. Allahu alam, right? I knew it. I mean, even Arabs, right? I knew there were Arabs in Syria, people who were Syrian, right, who would be on Fatiha for 3 and 4 months straight before Sheikh would let them advance, right? So this is not a thing of anyone has an advantage over the other. Tajweed is a science. If you don't study it, you're not going to master it. It's as simple as that. So I don't care where you're from. I don't care what your background is. I don't care what languages you speak. It doesn't matter. Tajweed is its own thing. Qur'an is its own thing. It is unique. MashaAllah. It's the book of Allah, and it needs to be studied. It needs to be studied in order to understand it or even properly recite it. So if you don't study it, you're not going to master it. It's as simple as that. And so you got to have a lot of patience. It might be a while before you really get your Fatiha tight, and that's okay. You just got to be okay with that and just keep it trucking. The next thing is you got to have some serious listening skills. You got to really, 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 really listen, not only to your own recitation, but to the recitation of others. I always tell people Tajweed is one of those things. It's one of those subjects that having one-on-one with the teacher is not actually like bragging rights. A lot of people say, yeah, I got the private classes with Sheikh so-and-so. It's just me and him, me and her, and that's it. Well, with Tajweed, is not necessarily an advantage. That's a disadvantage. You want other people in your Tajweed class. You want to hear other people reciting. You want to hear other people getting corrected, because that helps you. It actually helps you. Remember what I said in the beginning? We would sit there and we'd only read for 5 to 10 minutes max, but then the other 2 hours, 3 hours was spent listening to others, and that was the majority of the benefit that we got, was actually hearing others be recite and be corrected. And then, and so, it's a different, it's really a different experience. So you have some really good listening skills. And another thing about the humility too, this kind of goes back to the humility. You'll develop a very keen ear for good Tajweed and poor Tajweed, right? And so you got to be able to be humble enough to withhold and refrain from pointing out that people have bad Tajweed. Because in the beginning, you might not be able to pick up, right? You hear somebody have a beautiful voice. Tajweed is all jacked up, right? But you don't know that. You just hear the beautiful voice. You don't have an ear for Tajweed. You just have an ear for, beautiful voices, right? Which most of us do, right? And so all of a sudden you start studying Tajweed in depth. I promise you, guaranteed, you're going to develop a very keen ear for Tajweed, good Tajweed and poor Tajweed. And so it's going to be tempting to be like, man, that guy's Fatiha is messed up. Oh man, that guy was messing up all kinds of stuff. He wasn't doing any qalqala. He wasn't doing any this. So gotta be able to tone it down. Don't talk about anybody's Tajweed to anybody else. Keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself, and just use it as motivation for you to, kind of stay on top of yourself, and to help, perhaps use it as motivation to teach, right? Maybe offer your services to the person, and after you get to a certain level, say, hey, listen, doing some Tajweed classes, you want to join, Bismillah. And so use it to lift people up, not to break people down, not tear people down. So we gotta stay humble, inshallah, throughout this experience. And last but not least, in terms of requirements and course material, a great sense of humor. I'm a jokester. I joke a lot, you know what I'm saying? But then you also have the part of, like I said in the video, in order for me to give you an idea of why I'm correcting you, I have to repeat what you say, right? And so it might sound like I'm mocking you, but I'm actually not, right? And this is, now mind you, I'm just teaching the way I was taught. This is how all my teachers taught me. They would repeat what you say, right? And then say it the right way. And so, I might say, okay, you don't say, afwaj, it's afwaj, right? Afwaja, not afwaja, afwaja. But I'm not making fun of you. I'm telling you, this is what I hear, right? And this is what I want you to say. But then in general too, I tend to just joke, I poke fun sometimes. I'm not picking on people. I'm not a bully, right? But I mess with people once in a while in my class, kind of keeps everything kind of upbeat and not so dry, but it's just a part of my personality. If you don't like it, just tell me, hey man, I don't like when you joke with me, and I'll joke with everybody else but you. I'll be dry with you. So the next thing is the goal. The goal is getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Through getting our tajweed game tight. Simple as that, right? We want to get our tajweed game tight because we want to preserve the Qur'an or contribute to the preservation of the Qur'an through reciting it properly, as well as memorizing. But for those of us who find difficulty in memorizing, right, then this is one way you can contribute heavily as well, is through preserving the proper recitation and passing that on to future generations, inshallah. So we'll begin with definitions of tajweed, both literal and technical, history of tajweed, ruling of tajweed, the virtue of reciting Qur'an with tajweed, as well as etiquette with the Qur'an in general, what you should do before to prepare reciting Qur'an, during the recitation of Qur'an, as well as after studying the Qur'an, which obviously after is, it just means like, once you reach a certain level, there's expectations, but like, or not a certain level, once you're on the journey, period, once you started, there's certain expectations that are upon us. But Dr. Shadee, how much time I got? Am I finished?
Keep going, whatever you need to say.
All right. Yeah, I'm almost done anyway. It's not. So then, and then once we get past all the, those preliminary things, that's all important. Whenever studying the Islamic sciences, you'll see a pattern of that, going over the definitions. It's really important to understand what it is that you're studying, right? So that you're not caught off guard. Well, why are we covering this? Why is he doing that? Why is he nitpicking here? Why? Well, when we do all that preliminary stuff, it knocks all that confusion out and gives you a clear idea as to why everything is the way that it is. And so the next phase after that class, we will start with the theory, right? We'll start learning the theory and then applying right away. So the way it's going to be is we're going to do 2 classes a week. We're going to be Thursday and Sunday, right? So on Thursday, let's say, for example, on the first day of the week that we do, of the 2 days, we're going to study theory. And then the next class, we're going to do drills to help us apply the rule that we learned in the previous class. As we progress, you'll be expected to apply more and more of the rules that we learn. So say, for example, we learn idgham in the first week. We're going to learn the theory, right? What is it? What does it mean? How do I identify it? So on and so forth. Look for examples in the Qur'an on our own, kind of split up, take some time for ourselves, find it in the Qur'an, share our examples with each other, make mistakes, get corrected, gives us a better understanding, right? Next class, all right, we're reciting, boom. We're going to try to, I'm going to hold you accountable for being able to apply that rule, right? Based on our previous class. And then the next time we'll do, let's say, idhar. And then the next application class, I'm going to expect idgham and idhar. And then the next application class, idgham, idhar, and iqlab. And so each time we go, we're going to build up. So by the time you finish, you'll be expected to be able to at least identify, as well as apply at least to a certain level, right? Because everybody's at different levels. Not everybody's going to be at the same level at the end of this class, right? But at least you're going to have an idea of how to apply it properly, at the very least, if not master it, inshallah, right? But you have an idea of how to apply it, and also you'll be able to identify it, right? And so you just be held accountable for more and more the more that we learn. Whatever we don't learn, you won't be held accountable for it until we learn it. But the very, very beginning, we will go back to the basics. Just really quickly kind of breeze through, right? You see in this chart here that I have, this chart with ba, right? This is ba in 12 different ways, right? First one, you got ba with fatha kasra dhamma. Then you have it with the, oh, I missed one. Subhanallah. I didn't add one more. So it's actually going to be more than 12. It's 12 going to be 15. So you have fatha kasra dhamma. Then you have alif, ya, and waw. Then you have the ba with sukoons preceded by fatha kasra and dhamma. And then you have the ba with shaddas as well, preceded by fatha kasra and dhamma. And you're also obviously going to have ba with the tanween, fathatan, kasratan, dhammatan, right? And so what's the significance of this? Why we got to go back to this? Don't we do this in qaida nuraniyah? Don't we learn this when we're like 5 years old? Yes, okay, it's fine. However, you didn't do it, most people, not all people, some of you might have, but most people did not do it with necessarily with tajweed in mind. We did it with reading the Qur'an in mind. So it's different, right? So I might be able to say ba, bi, bu, eb, ib, uba, abba, abbi, abbu, and all the other variations that can happen to that. Ban, bin, bun, right? All that with ba perfectly. Try it with ayn, right? Some people can say ah, no problem. But some people have a really hard time saying ai with dhamma, with kasra, excuse me. Some people have a hard time saying u with dhamma, right? The ayn with dhamma, have a hard time saying it. Some people can say u, no problem. But then you tell them say with sukoon, difficulty. I might say no problem, but then I say I might have a problem with that one. With sukoon preceded by kasra. Then you say I might have difficulty saying that one. Or I can say all 6 of those, but then I say fa'alul lima yurid. Fa'a, a'i, a'u. Right? I might have difficulty saying it with shadda. So how do we figure that out? By drilling ourselves with all of the letters in all of these various formats to see where our weaknesses are. So once we are able to identify our weaknesses, boom, we're able to hone in and inshallah fix those things. So we're not going to spend like half the semester on that, but I definitely want to bring it back to the basics, inshallah. And most of that will be kind of self-study, and you can contact me and we can kind of, if you need, and go over and so on and so forth. I could even create some recordings of it so you can practice with the recordings and so on and so forth, inshallah. But we will go back to the basics, and we will be talking about some of the makharij as well. It's not good to just skip things just because, most of us have done this. No. We're going to go through the basics. We're going to do makharij al-huruf again. Yes, we're going to talk about the letters of the throat and the tongue and if you did this, it's okay. Like I said in the other video on the podcast with Dr. Shadee, if you are already proficient in this, but perhaps never taught it, right, or don't have much experience teaching it, use that as an opportunity to learn how you can teach that material to other people. Because at the end of the day, why are we studying tajweed? Only to improve ourselves? No, to pass it on as well. Why are we studying Qur'an? Only for ourselves? No, so we can pass it on, teach it to our kids, teach it to our community members, maybe teach it to our parents, right? We want to teach as many people as we possibly can, but we first want to learn it ourselves, right? And so, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Khayrukum man ta'allama al-Qur'ana wa 'allama." The best of you is the one who learns the Qur'an and teaches it. Right? So in order for us to be khairun nas, right, or the best of people, it's not enough for us to just learn it on our own. We got to be ready to teach it. So yeah, I know this already. Okay, have you ever taught it? If not, bismillah, take notes on how it's being taught and try to use that, inshallah, when teaching others. Let me see here if there's anything else, right? Yeah, so everything else I pretty much explained. So that's pretty much it. So alhamdulillah, that's pretty much what our class is going to be like. It's going to be basically theory one day, application the next day, and pretty much simple like that. And then and somebody had asked too, if are we going to do any kind of one-on-one Quran training or anything of that nature? Yes, inshallah, at the end of the application class, especially, we will inshallah have one-on-one between me and various students. Inshallah, we will have one-on-one recitation where a person can recite and I'll correct them and everyone else will listen, and you take turns doing that. However, the class is not that long, so we'll be limited, right? And so what we can do is some days after we've studied a certain amount so that we can focus and hone in on application, we might I can dedicate some like whole classes from the beginning to just application, so as many people can read as possible. Some days we might just come on, Bismillah, let's get started. All right, who's here? Who's gonna get started? Boom, Bismillah, let's start. Fatiha, Niaz, Falaq, whatever the case may be, right? Recite, and then we're gonna go through just like that, inshallah. But the last thing I'll say is there might be days where maybe only 4 or 5 people can read, and there might be 20 people, 30 people in the class, right? It might only be like, who knows, 4 or 5, 6, 7 or some people be able to read, 10 people be able to read this class, then the next 10 will be in another class, and so on and so forth. So I think that's everything. If anybody has any questions, you guys can direct it to Safina Society, and I can get back with them, inshallah. I hope so.
Thank you very much. And I told you, no one teaches a Tajweed class that's more energized than Ashir's Tajweed class. I remember even taking you conducted a class on a way in the car to Boston on Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Oh, okay.
And a ton of people actually never said it right. They had never actually been taught about the kasra and how deep the kasra actually should be. So the Ashir's class is going to be full of energy. But like you said, it's the very most important thing he said is that you don't learn Tajweed only when you're reciting. You learn Tajweed when you're listening as well. So if there are 10 people in the class, you're learning by listening to their mistakes as well, not just when you're reciting. And this is important for everybody to know, because I remember myself conducting Tajweed classes in which students would be sitting, waiting, texting, thinking that that's not part of the education until they come and they say, I only recited 2 ayahs. Come on, it's not fair. It doesn't work like that. You learn as much by listening as you do by reciting. So that's the most important point from Ashir's presentation. All right, Jazakallah khairan. So now Ashir's, we start next Sunday, but remember, Ashir's class meets Saturday and Thursday. So your first class will actually be on the 25th.
Oh, Thursday and Saturday. Sorry, I said
Thursday and Saturday. Yeah. So we start on Sunday, but Ashir's first class will be on the 25th, Thursday, the 25th. Okay, and then meet again on the 27th. All right. So those are the classes now for Ashir. Now for Ashir, youth could take the class too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Ashir's class is the crossover between the youth and the adults.
Yeah. Son, daughter, mother, father, mix and match, auntie, uncle, grandma, grandpa, everybody can do it together. As
long as the person doesn't stutter over letters and tashkil. You got to know your letters. You got to know your tashkil.
That's just know the letters, know the tashkil at least like really well. If you stammer, it's all right, but you got to learn those things, like get that like real tight before joining the class. It'll be an easier experience for you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ashir. Jazakallah khairan.
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome.
All right. So Ashir's class is the crossover between youth and adults. Did we freeze or what? All right, we good? So Ashir's class is a crossover. Youth could take it, adults can take it. Now we shift over now to the youth class. And for that, our youth class is going to be taught by Ali bin Saad, only a few years removed from himself being a youth. Ali, I remember Ali being a young student when I taught in Central Jersey, or some people would have called it South Jersey, in Middletown, New Jersey, a class for youth. And now, mashallah, he keeps studying and studying and studying. And now he's the teacher of our youth, and he has a class called Hadith for youth. But if anyone knows anything about Hadith and Qur'an, they open up to all the subjects. So he may as well cover many other subjects that overflow beyond Hadith. All right, so Ali, take it away. And if you have a screen, let me know. We could just share that.
Inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. I just want to say right off the bat, StreamYard, way better than Zoom, mashallah. It's been easy for all these transitions and stuff, and it looks great, mashallah. So I hope that, I ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses Dr. Shadee and Safina Society. Alhamdulillah, it's been great being on the student side, and then slowly transitioning into teaching at a youth level. And for me, that's always been my goal, alhamdulillah, teaching and benefiting from the youth as much as possible. And through this effort, especially with last term where we had the introduction class to Fiqh and that was really great. Fiqh for youth, and alhamdulillah, those students, I don't know if any of them are watching or if their parents are watching, but they were very, very active. They enjoyed it a lot from the feedback that we were getting, alhamdulillah, and they were doing really well with the class, and I asked that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses them too. And we thought to ourselves, we said, we want to open up more classes for youth. And, we have a great thing too, because of the current situation with the virus and everything, that everybody has to stay home. And a lot of kids are running around the house screaming, and summer camps are closed. You can't take your kids anywhere, right? They're all at home. And so it's actually our advantage now that we can put them in an online program that's live with instructors. And alhamdulillah, we have so many options with Safina Society. And then on the other end, we have openings of more hadith classes. And I've actually been telling Dr. Shadee for a while that we needed some of them, as were a number of other students, particularly with Ijaza classes. And so the class with Mufti Niaz, I 100% will be taking that class, and I recommend for a lot of people to do so. It's not often that you find somebody who is knowledgeable in the field of hadith, who is available to teach online. And so whenever you have those opportunities, you should always take them. And alhamdulillah, think of my class, Hadith for Youth, as the baby version of that class. The good thing about Hadith, like Dr. Shadee said, is that it always includes discussions into other subjects and into other fields. And I remember a while back, I was listening to Sheikh Shadee give his class on the Riyadh al-Salihin, which he does in the masjid at MBIC, and he does it with a small group of people weekly on Sundays. And you go off on so many tangents, and it's not really unrelevant tangents. It's actually very relevant, and a lot of people have a lot of questions and they bring them up, and it's something that adults really benefit from. But how do we actually translate that for youth, and how do we begin teaching youth? And you have a number of parents who are concerned about their child's education, particularly their fundamental Islamic education. And the fundamentals of Islam itself, it's not easy to teach, and it's not easy to find somebody who will dedicate their time to teaching that, or an institution that will do that. And so alhamdulillah, with Safina Society, we're starting to do that, and we're getting our foundations in to start building a platform for these for younger students online, alhamdulillah. And if I can share my screen, that would be great too. Let me look at Bismillah. Here we go. And so I'm going to share it here. So for this term, inshallah, we're going to be doing Hadith for Youth, and it's going to be based off of what I went around and I asked several knowledgeable teachers in the field of Hadith, and I asked them, what's the best possible book that I can teach younger children, or I could take from, or what's the best way to teach youth, and they all went back to the 40 of Imam an-Nawawi. And if you look into Hadith literature itself, almost every single Hadith scholar has written a 40-something. 40 Hadith on this, 40 Hadith on eating, 40 Hadith on fasting, 40 Hadith on Ramadan. The number 40 itself was known as a very easy number for people to memorize, right? If you want to give somebody the essentials of Hadith, of Islam, you give it to them in 40 Hadiths. Nowadays, if you want to give the essentials of something to somebody, you give them 5 things. Back then it was 1,000, and then they shortened it to like 100, then they shortened it to like 40. And so now we're at the stage of 5. I think pretty soon we're going to be getting into like 1 or even less. I don't even know what's going to happen after that. It's just the modern student is less interested in bulk knowledge and is more interested in concise knowledge. And so when we're talking about youth, we're really dealing with about 30 minutes of an attention span, before kids really start getting bored. So giving Hadith in a very easy way for them to remember, and a very easy way for them to hold on to is very, very important. It's valuable for them. So we're beginning these foundational works with children, and we want them to become productive members of society, particularly productive Muslim members of society, who are knowledgeable in their aqidah, who are knowledgeable in their theology, knowledgeable in their fiqh, or their ritual worship and their ritual practices. They know all about Islam at a fundamental level. And the foundations for this begin here in Hadith. Hadith is very essential because it amasses so many fields of the Islamic Sharia. And in essence, it's where it all began. All of the sciences that we have in Islam for people who want to study, who want to go into the study of seeking knowledge and so on, all of it attributes itself to the Hadith literature and how that was compiled, and later how the teachers began to specialize and teach certain hadiths in certain fields. And then that's how you started getting fiqh, and that's how you started getting aqidah, and so on. Even the study of Qur'an attributes itself to a similar chain of narration that is also used in the hadith literature. So you can find different ways that hadith is related to the other sciences. And so it's really valuable for students to start with this step. So why the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi? Because it's so relied upon. It's so common. If I tell you to go buy a book of hadith and you go to an Islamic bookstore, most likely that the bookseller, he's just going to pull out a copy of 40 Nawawi. It's in pocket editions, it's on your Kindle, it's on your iPhone and in an app, it's everywhere. So the 40 Nawawi of hadith, you can find it anywhere. On top of that, it's relied upon by almost every single sect of Islam. Like you have people from the far right, from the far left, from the far up, and from the far down. Everybody has read this book, has been touched by this book in one way or another. And it's a true testament to Imam al-Nawawi and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's reward of those who have an honest intention behind doing things. And I ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives Safina Society that honest intention and that sort of fundamental, valuable work that similar to Imam al-Nawawi and how he has been able to affect generations of Muslims. I ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows for Safina Society and for Sheikh Shadee to have that sort of effect. Now with what we're doing with 40 Nawawi, are we actually teaching 40 hadiths to youth? Yes and no. Okay. We're teaching them an abridged version of it. And the reason for this is because going into detail on every single hadith in the 40 Nawawi, there are some hadiths that are relevant to children to understand and some that they're not there yet, right? And so it could be introduced later on, when they're a little further along their studies, possibly in middle school or high school, and so on. So the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi, while they're meant to be basic hadith, not all of them match up with a youth's understanding of vocabulary and so on. So these 40 hadiths, what we do is we select some of them, and then through that selection, we go over known figures in the Islamic hadith tradition. So when you're reading hadith, what's great about it is you're going to hear a chain of narration. From you're going to hear like Umar ibn al-Khattab, from the Prophet ﷺ, right? And so then you're going to have a discussion about who Umar ibn al-Khattab is, right? And so for a child who's 7, 8, 9 years old, they're going to learn about Umar ibn al-Khattab's life. And so on. They're going to learn about Imam al-Nawawi. They're going to learn about Imam Muslim, Imam Bukhari. They're going to learn about many of the Tabi'een, Hasan al-Basri. They're going to learn about so many of these important figures in Islam through every single hadith that's narrated. And from there, they're going to get, these little, think of it like a web, right? And they're going to start these little threads of understanding in different fields of Islam. And so they're going to know who Umar ibn al-Khattab is, who Imam Malik is, who Imam Abu Hanifa is, right? And then they're going to understand these figures. As they go through their study of Islam, they're going to be able to reference back to this class here. What's interesting is that for me, when I began my studies as a youth, I began my studies with Hadith. I began my studies with the 40 Nawawi, and then a class on Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim. All were taught by Dr. Shadee like years ago, he was talking about in Middletown. And that's really funny because there was actually a funny story. He, mashallah, I think this was a little bit earlier in Dr. Shadee's days, but we showed up in t-shirts and shorts because it was the summer. And he looked at us, and because we were kids, like we were, it was me and my friends, and we were like a lot of kids. They came with like really short shorts or whatever, like bathing shorts to the masjid. So we didn't know that was improper dress for the masjid. Dr. Shadee took one look and he said, "Not again." And all the kids went home and they were so upset that they couldn't wear shorts. But mashallah, I think after that,
sweatpants.
yeah, or like sweatpants. And anybody knows Dr. Shadee does not like sweatpants, no pajamas, no short sleeves, nothing. You come in, you dress well, and you sit down and you dress like you deserve the knowledge that's being given to you. So I think you come prepared for that. And that's a very Islamic understanding, and that's a very good understanding too. Moving past that, and alhamdulillah, what we're looking at here in the third bullet point, 12 weeks and 24 classes. So it's actually really good. You have 12 weeks, 24 classes. It comes out to be 12 hours of instruction for every single child. Those 12 hours, they'll be able to get a good fundamental understanding of hadith, a good foundational understanding of who's who in Islam, and then on top of that, they get valuable lessons from the hadith tradition. Valuable lessons, like lifelong lessons. And so you learn these hadith and it sticks with you. The teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, what it means to have an intention, what it means to make dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what it means to pray, what it means to so many things that hadith touches, they will be able to walk away with those understandings. And I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it a blessed effort. Everybody here, we have an honest intention, and we're trying to do things that are geared towards your family, all of our families. And the people here, we're not some distant, far off organization that's like some crazy institution, one of these like large, like a Harvard or anything like that. We're your local people. We're everybody from the masjid. We come to the same prayers. We all eat from the same food. We all wear the same clothes. We all talk about the same everything. And so we go through life experiences together. And so we understand the things that youth are going to go through. I understand it, right? And so many other people do too. And we're all here at Safina Society trying to, make our community a better place, alhamdulillah. And that all starts with these classes here. And it all starts with Dr. Shadee as well. And I want to thank him and thank everybody for watching the stream, alhamdulillah. And I hope that, this served as a little bit of a benefit for you all. Alhamdulillah. And inshallah ta'ala, you guys will all benefit, bi'idhnillah.
Thank you very much, Ali, and for the important reminder that Imam al-Nawawi, what he provides for us is an example of al-Qubul, that Allah Ta'ala has accepted his intention. Imam al-Nawawi's there's no building that he built, there's no country that he conquered. He put together books, and if you look at the work of 40 Nawawi hadiths, there's nothing except that he chose technically 42 hadiths. He put 2 extra in case you forget one, you'll still have 40 memorized. But he just gathered them. But why is it that his gathering of 40 hadiths, when there are hundreds of scholars in the past who have gathered 40 hadiths, why his 40 hadiths? And the ulama all tell us it's the ikhlas. Imam al-Nawawi has ikhlas, and he established the intention to collect the 40 hadiths that give us a foundation of our religion. And we actually have to take that as an example. And if there's one thing, it's not names, it's not anything else except for the qubul from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should never trade that in. The barakah, that Allah ta'ala accepts the intention. You could be doing something very simple, but Allah accepts the intention. It'll have a far-reaching impact. And that's what we hope to do. So we ask Allah Ta'ala, firstly, thank you to Ali for the reminder on the importance and the example of Imam al-Nawawi in ikhlas. And all of us in our work, when you study, when you take these classes, come with ikhlas that you're going to teach this, that you're going to take it for yourself. You're the first person, and then to the next person next to you. And this is the first lesson that I personally received, and is the methodology of all the teachers that I took, is that this knowledge is meant for you first and then to be passed on. And that's what Ali was alluding to, that this is not some we don't have interest in highfalutin ideas that have no impact on daily life. It's daily life and it's lived life, and try to impact the next person down the road, the next person that you live with. And that's how khair is going to spread. Okay, and that's how the goodness is going to transmit. So thank you very much, Ali. If anyone has any questions on Ali's class, just send a message over. He has his own Safina Society email address, ali.bensaad@safinasaad.com. safinasociety.org, or send it to myarkview@safinasociety.org if it's a logistical matter or administrative matter. So thank you very much, Adi. All right, now before we move to the next class, which is the tweens class, which is one rung under the youth class, it's for that 12, 13 age group. That's middle school, basically. I just want to make a point for those who take the classes on site, specifically the scholarship classes. The registration for Arkview Plus is the same registration. It's treated by the organization as the same registration as the Awailim scholarship track on site in MBIC. So if you sign up for Arkview Plus, you simply have to inform us that you're coming to Awailim. You don't need to sign up again. For those who know what Awailim is the on-site at MBIC class that we have from 2 to 5. And hopefully in the fall, inshallah, we'll be back up and running in person. So if you sign up for Arkview Plus, you are automatically in Awailim. You don't need to sign up again. Okay. So Arkview Plus, anyone who signed up for Arkview Plus can come in and take the live class at MBIC. All right. So it's the same sign up. It's the same registration. But basically, if you just tell us, inform us that you're coming, because we do prepare a lunch for that class so that we know how many people to make lunch for. Again, that's for the fall term, and we'll repeat that again when the fall term comes. All right, without any further delay, let's now move to Youssra Kamel Kandil. She is a local from Central Jersey, mashallah, and has in fact been with this organization and been with our effort and our work from day one in 2013, doing classes during the weekdays. And alhamdulillah, in the past year and a half or so, she's come back to do classes for us, both on site and now online, as obviously everything now is online. And so, Sister Youssra, take it away.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So nice to be here today, mashallah. Alhamdulillah, I've been very blessed to be part of Safina from the very, very beginning. Alhamdulillah, whether I was teaching or studying, and really blessed to be one of Sheikh Shadee's students, Ya Rab, for like many years, and hoping, Ya Rab, inshallah, for many years to come. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Rab, bless him and bless his efforts and, all the knowledge that we've gained from him. And so I think in return, as I've always learned, that when you learn something, you have to pass the knowledge on, even if it's just something small. And inshallah, bismillah, I'm going to be teaching the tweens, which is the age I really enjoy teaching. They're not very little yet, and they're not in those teenage years either, where it's kind of like you have to figure out what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, and how to kind of really get them engaged. It's a very different age, subhanallah. But inshallah, bismillah, I'm going to be teaching the tweens. And we were in the past, during the full session, we kind of covered a little bit. We started with the Maliki Fiqh for them, and then after that we did a bit of Seerah, and I realized that they really, really enjoy storytelling, which is something I think we can all agree upon, that listening to stories always kind of like sticks with us. We learn something from it. It's something we can relate to as human beings, because it has stories of other people, other human interactions, and what happened and whatnot. So inshallah, bismillah, in this course, I'm going to be doing stories of the prophets. I'm hoping, inshallah, again, as I said, or as Brother Ali was saying, their attention span really after 30 minutes is like kind of like, okay, I know they're looking at me, but they're kind of like zoned off. They're somewhere else. And I kind of understand, even as an adult, sometimes after 30 minutes, you need to get up, you need to just, move, do something to kind of refresh and get refocused. So I'm hoping, inshallah, to be able to engage the kids in. This is not just kind of going to be the type of a class where they sit down and they get a lecture, but more of interaction. I'm hoping, inshallah, we could have something called breakout rooms, of those of you who are familiar with Zoom, where the kids can break up into groups. They could present something at the end of class. One of the main things that I really want to focus on the stories of the prophets is something I realized a lot of the kids that I've taught in the past, even my own children, they always kind of get confused on how each prophet was actually sent to complete the one before. They all came with the same message, but it was kind of like, different, like not different. It's the same idea, believing in one God, but then certain rules applied each time. And I feel like, they'd always ask me like, so wait a minute, so how were the people that were living at the time of Sayyidina Isa still considered Muslims? I was like, well, if you lived at the time of Sayyidina Isa, right, and it was Sayyidina Isa at that time, you would have to follow Sayyidina Isa, and you'd be considered, a Hanafi or a Muslim, or believing in one Allah, or one God. So I think I really, really want to focus on this idea, how all the prophets came to complete one another, and how they came with the same message. And one thing, inshallah, I'm going to be trying to implement in class is memorizing one dua for each prophet as we go along, and then inshallah compiling. Inshallah, breakout rooms, as I said, presentations between them during class. I'm not going to be assigning any homework or anything, because I don't want the kids to be kind of turned off with the idea, oh, this is another class, we just finished school. So storytelling, presentations, hopefully, inshallah, maybe some poetry, some improv. So we'll try to pull out some of these, the talents that they might have, and inshallah memorizing hadith as well as we go, and hoping to build up, and hopefully, ya Rabb, inshallah, that they would be able to apply these hadith to know which prophet said which dua when. Not hadith, sorry, I said hadith, I meant dua. So which prophet used which dua in which situation, and then hopefully, ya Rabb, they would be able to apply. Maybe if someone is not feeling well, they could say the dua of Sayyidina Ayyub, Rabbi anni massani yadurru wa anta arhamur rahimin, or something they're struggling with, Sayyidina Shu'aib, Rabbana ftah baynana, open between us wal qawm al-zalimin, or and so on and so forth. So this is inshallah my goal for the for this course. There is no book that they need to have. I just want them to come, inshallah, ready to have a good time and to learn a new story, a new dua. Hopefully, inshallah, I could also share with them the duas if you would want to review with them and keep on, practicing the duas every day, and know which dua is said when, bi'idhnillah. So inshallah, I'll be trying to share that. And of course, any questions or anything, inshallah, I'm going to be more than happy to respond to them. Jazakumullah khairan.
Thank you very much, Sister Youssra. And could you tell us again real quick, what time is your class? What the schedule is?
So I think, inshallah, we're doing Tuesdays at 3 o'clock as of now,
Tuesday,
inshallah.
3 o'clock. Okay, very good. Very good. All right, thank you very much. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you very much. All right, next up, now we move to the final class, which is the kids class, which is divided into a couple different sections. And we will begin with Ali Bhatti, and then we will go to Afnan, and then we will go to Hala Amr. So Ali Bhatti is up next. Ali Bhatti is actually someone who has a lot of experience. He's lived in two different big Muslim hubs. He's lived in Toronto. He's from Toronto originally, if I'm not mistaken. Then he lived in California, right? He lived with the. You're from Toronto or California? Which one was it?
Sorry, Toronto.
You're from Toronto, so you lived there, and then you lived in California for about a decade, right? And California was, of course, a big hub, especially from the late 90s. At that time was a big hub. And now you're in, do we qualify as a hub now? Central Jersey? I hope so. So, inshallah, Ali Bhatti will tell us exactly when your classes will be and what your classes will be and to what age group.
Yep. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So I'll be teaching the kids age group, which is grades 2 to grade 5, generally speaking, elementary school. And a part of that's because my kids are actually in elementary school. Two of them are in elementary school. One of them is going to be in the tweens class. And when I moved here to New Jersey, we had put my kids into a different Sunday school. I won't mention which much, but my eldest daughter, had a horrible experience. She was crying. She hated going to Sunday school. And me being a Sunday school teacher and having a lot of youth work, it kind of broke me to see my kids hating to go to a youth program. So when I introduced them to NBIC and I saw Sister Fatima's, her kids club, and I think her Friday night program, it blew me away. I never saw any masjid in America, I don't know, even in the world, that has done stuff that NBIC has done. Things like fort contests. They had like glow in the dark things going on. They had so many different obstacle courses. I mean, they made it so fun that my kids, they were blown away, mashallah. And that really attracted me to, in fact, I actually heard about NBIC when I was in California, because NBIC did a Curious George story time. And I was shocked. People in California were shocked. I mean, the news got out, like, I'm sure people all across the country kind of were amazed at that, mashallah. So anyways, needless to say, I joined NBIC 2 years ago to teach, and I brought my kids along, and my kids are in, 2 of my kids will be part of the kids program, and one of my kids, I'm really excited actually for Sister Youssra's class. My daughter's going to be in the tweens class. My class will be, inshallah, Sundays. I believe that the timing got changed a little bit. I believe it's 11:30 to 12 right now. And basically it'll be 30 minutes, and it's going to combine the older kids and the younger kids together. Bismillah. And then in terms of the class itself, so the class itself is Seerah stories for kids. I'm really, really, really passionate about the subject. And a part of the reason why is because I really feel that not just for kids, for adults as well. If you have love, if there's love for Islam, or if there's love for the Prophet ﷺ, love for Allah, and you do something out of love, it's so much different of an experience than if you do it because your parents told you to, right? Your parents told you have to pray. Your parents told you dress like this, right? As opposed to, man, the Prophet ﷺ dressed like that. The Prophet ﷺ did this, right? Allah said this. And because the kid loves Allah and the Prophet ﷺ, they want to be like them. And, you know, a lot of the adults listening, we grew up with, like, you know, that whole, the Michael Jordan phase of, like, be like Mike. And you guys probably heard this so many times, but we've had so many khutbahs about, you know, forget about be like Mike. We want to be like the Prophet ﷺ. But the focus of my class is I want to take things out of the command language of be like the Prophet ﷺ, do this, do that. It's very dry. To actually, let me tell you about the Prophet ﷺ. Let's go right into a story. Let me tell you how he looked like, how he smiled, how he joked around, how he played jokes with his wives, how he ran with his wives, how he how he cried, how he interacted with little kids, right, with teenagers, how he interacted with women, with old women, how he cracked jokes with Sahaba, right? What was his mainstay? A lot of people, this might kind of drive the point home. If you ever take your kid to a khutbah, usually the khutbah is pretty serious, right? And they're mentioning a hadith, right? And you know, the hadith, usually the imam is either very serious, sometimes the imam's yelling, and he said, Qala Rasulullah, and he says the hadith. The child is seeing a very serious imam almost yell the hadith. So the child's like, oh my God, this is how the Prophet must have been. He must have been yelling, or he must have been serious all the time. And it's so sad because when I talk to kids, that's their image, right? Somebody that's really serious, somebody that doesn't smile, right? Somebody that's, you know, like totally off of what the Prophet was, right? The Prophet was smiling almost all the time. Sahaba said that, like, they would see him, the Messenger of Allah, and he was smiling. He'd smile while he spoke, right? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So you know, that's really kind of like, we need to change that mindset, right? Now there's a hadith that always strikes me, right? The hadith of Umar radiallahu anhu. When Umar radiallahu anhu, he goes to the Prophet and he says, Ya Rasulullah, I love you more than everything except my own self. And then the Prophet says, O Umar, verily you don't believe until you love me more than everything, including your own self. And then Umar radiallahu anh, it's as if Iman enters his heart, and that level of love enters his heart, and he says, Ya Rasulullah, I love you now more than even my own self. And the Prophet confirms his Iman and said, now your Iman is basically complete, right? So I always tell kids, and I tell adults this too, how are we going to get to a point where we love the Prophet more than the Super Bowl, more than a Lamborghini, more than our fat house, more than Call of Duty or whatever video games kids are playing these days, more than our favorite food, ice cream, right? Whatever it is. How are we going to, because it's okay to love those things, but how are we going to make the Prophet more beloved to us than all that stuff, right? Because it's that important. That's how our Iman's going to, you know, be there. And the only way you love someone, hands down, is you got to know them, right? You got to know their stories. You got to know, how did they walk? You know, the Prophet, he had swag. Look at the way he dressed. Look at the way he spoke. Look at the way he acted. Look at the way he behaved. And when the more the children, and us adults as well, myself included, the more we know about the Prophet, the more we just fall in love with him, until we just want to know more. We want to know more, right? It's like Jannah to, like, listen to the stories of the Prophet when you really feel it and you're there and you're imagining it, just being in that. It's as if you're seeing the movie of the Seerah in front of you. That's like the most pleasurable feeling. seeing the Prophet ﷺ in your mind, seeing what he went through, right? So you're taking the hadith of what he's saying, and now we're gonna paint the imagery around to let kids know this is actually what was going on, right? We want kids to actually see the Prophet ﷺ in their mind, and I'll end on that point. If you go to the average kid or the average adult, right, and you ask them, how does Donald Trump look like? How does Spider-Man look like? How does Batman look like? How does this hero look like? Guaranteed, they'll be like, oh, Donald Trump, he's got like orange hair or whatever. He wears a suit. He talks like this. He walks like that. Spider-Man, da 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 da. They can tell you everything. But then ask them, how did the Prophet ﷺ look like? How did the Prophet ﷺ smile? Tell me one joke the Prophet ﷺ said. Tell me, did the Prophet ﷺ race with kids? Tell me one thing tell me your favorite story, your top 5 favorite stories of the Prophet ﷺ. And when I ask adults, forget about kids, man. When I ask adults, their mind goes blank. They can't tell you. They're like, their mind, they think, and they usually say a generic story that they heard when they were a kid, right? Like, that's not how it should be. Like, we should know so much about the Prophet ﷺ that we could just tell you everything, because that's our beloved. He's Habibullah ﷺ, right? And so, inshallah, the goal, inshallah, is to create this emotional connection to the Prophet ﷺ where they could see him in their mind, they know stories about him, and most importantly, they have an emotional connection to the Prophet, right? Because, and this is the very last thing I'll end with, is that when there's a movie scene, think about this, right? If there's a Super Bowl or there's a movie or there's whatever, and an adult or one of us is watching or whatever, there's so much emotion, right? Children see their fathers getting excited about a Super Bowl, so excited, right? But then when their father mentions the Prophet ﷺ, no excitement, right? Or there's a movie scene and you're watching it, they see their mom crying because of a emotional scene, right? But then when the Prophet ﷺ is mentioned, there's no tears, right? How is the kid gonna get that, right? So we really want to tell stories in such a way that it shakes the heart, it moves the hearts, right? The hearts are like the same way you'd be moved from seeing some fake made up movie. We want to move our hearts about the truth of the Prophet ﷺ, and we want to have that love for the Prophet ﷺ. So really, the goal is, inshallah, to get these children, inshallah, to have emotional children, and inshallah, hopefully the parents that are watching, to have an emotional connection with the Prophet ﷺ. So that's the class, inshallah, on Sundays. We just kicked off a short class for adults that are similar, much more shorter. It's 5 to 10 minutes every Monday at 7 p.m. called Glances of the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that I'm doing right before I recite the Ratib. That will also hopefully be for adults. And then for Safina, obviously, this class will be on Sundays for 30 minutes. And again, the intention is to increase our love and connection for the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much, Ali. And having seen Ali in action when we used to do this in person at MBIC, he really does get into it. And this is the right way to do things. And this is why Imam Abu Hanifa said, Al-qasasu ahabbu ilayya min al-fiqh, to tell stories about the Sahaba and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is more beloved to me than fiqh, because those things show us how the deen is applied. Whereas studying fiqh is the theory, very important and excellent subject that you have to study, but how do you apply it? That's the real question. And that's why these stories are superior in reality to fiqh, is because, number one, it's much easier to swallow. Theory requires this part of the brain. Stories go straight into the heart. Anyone with ears will love to hear that, and without realizing, they'll understand the application of the fiqh. So Jazakallah khairan, Ali. Inshallah, my kids are looking forward to being part of it, and they're already big fans. If I'm speaking and then Ali Bhatti comes on, I had to move over. They want to listen to him. So mashallah, it comes out with the heart, and whatever, as Sayyidina Ali says, whatever comes from the heart reaches the heart. And so you could tell that. And so thank you so much, Ali, and we look forward to having it, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. And what Ali said otherwise is that the Monday at 7:15, he will also give a 5-minute, like a mini clip, I'm telling you, we need to do this constantly. That's why when he brought up the idea, I said yes right away, because it needs to be constant reminder of the Prophet ﷺ. If you look at the things that get us, like what is getting us today, I mean, elections, let's say, you see it on your phone and the news and the TV like 10 times a day. That's why it conquers really our attention span. And a Muslim life, dhikr of Allah Ta'ala, really dominates our horizon, and it should be there all the time. So even 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 30 minutes there. So that will be Monday. That's public on YouTube at 7:15, inshallah. Jazakallah, every Monday, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan Ali. Thank you very much. All right, we now move to the also part of the kids program. Now the kids program has 3 different teachers: Ali with the stories, Ali Bhatti, and then Afnan with the Qur'an, and Hala with the Fiqh. So let's now turn to Afnan, and Afnan will tell us.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. She's been teaching now for a year plus now, the kids, teaching them Qur'an and learning how to deal with these kids and what is the best way to get to them. So inshallah, Afnan, take it away and tell us about the timing of your class and exactly what the class will be all about.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So my class is going to be divided into 2 sessions. The first session is going to be for the kids who don't know how to read Arabic. I'm going to be using transliteration, basically, so that they kind of know how to read what they're seeing. And the second section is going to be for kids who know how to read Arabic. Now it's going to be basic recitation of like most common surahs like Surah Yasin, Surah Al-Mulk, and so on. And I've added a little bit to it, to the beginning to the class, so it's going to be more interactive, I guess. So I just added some Quranic verses, basically, that talk about morals, and we're going to be, inshallah, discussing them and explaining what they're about. And then I'm going to make the kids at the end of the semester kind of gather all the stories on the ayahs that they've learned and then share, and then they're going to be voting for the best story. Inshallah, they apply it, but like examples of ayahs like وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, be kind to your parents, and لَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا, do not backbite, and so on. So I think everyone here is trying to put themselves like in the student's chair to see how they're presenting stuff to them. And this is where I was like, okay, then if they're only reciting, it's going to be, again, boring for people who have like a very short span of attention. So I added the moral part, which I really think is a very interesting part, because after teaching kids, I noticed that, okay, so even if you recite or memorize a lot of ayahs, doesn't mean, or doesn't, I don't want to say doesn't mean anything, but it means more if you apply what you're learning. And I've noticed like the kids need some kind of maybe sharpening the edges, I guess, to kind of, inshallah, make it applicable more than only just memorizing. What else? So as I said, it's going to be split into 2 groups. So feel free to join whatever group you think your kids are like are going to be like, basically, if they speak Arabic or not. I guess that is it.
Okay, thank you. And that goes to show that we're learning here from experience, because I remember the first set of classes, the first time we did this, it was just recitation. And now you've added this element of reciting it with the story about a meaning, which is good, because we need to touch on these meanings constantly. Absolutely. And it gives some life. Meaning gives life to the words that we utter. So by teaching the meaning, it was a smart idea to add those, and inshallah you'll get a more engagement from the students by doing that. So jazakallah khairan for that. Now your class is at 9:30, is that right, or 10?
I think the first one starts at 10.
10 o'clock. Your class is at 10 o'clock, and as she said, it's 2 different levels. It's up to the parent to put their child in the level that benefits them. So because this is online, you can have the option of showing up to both and then seeing which one is suitable for them.
Yes.
All right, Jazakallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we go to our final presentation. Thank you for waiting so long. All right, is Hala Amr. So Sister Hala Amr she's actually one of the best students in the scholarship track classes. I think that basically all of her exams are like 99%. Right? And then if it's 99%, I'm going to get an email of how did that 1% happen. So when I realized, mashallah, this student is so strong and so good, this student should be teaching. And now, alhamdulillah, after a couple years of taking classes at the scholarship level, now she's teaching fiqh for kids, and she does a very good job at it and very thorough job at it. And when your kids take class with take the fiqh class with Hala, you'll see that they do a very good job. She's thorough. And like Afnan learned basically, because we're all trying to learn how to get to the student. We're competing against video games. We're competing against a lot of things here, right? So we have to tweak our game all the time, so to speak, and see how we can get to students. Now, Hala has done this as well, and she's going to talk about how she does this class, but her review session is all through Kahoot quizzes, which I think the kids really get riled up on and get excited by. So, Afnan, Hala, take it away.
All right. I've never tried this before, so please just bear with me 1 second. Current slide. All right. Oh my God. All right. Everybody see me? All right. Right. All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So basically, welcome to Fiqh for Kids, and inshallah, what we're going to be doing is we're going to divide the classes into 2 groups. Some kids have taken part 1 with me before, so it will be an intro class. And basically, we're going to be covering, it's very heavily focused on Salah and Tahara. And the advanced class is going to be some of the other subjects that we're going to go over in a second. Each class is going to be divided into a live session, which is going to be about 30 minutes. We're going to have a Kahoot interactive game, which the kids have responded really well to. I think it keeps them competitive, and they review the material just so that they can be in the top 5. And then, of course, the Google Classroom. Occasionally, I like to do quizzes. I do like to do kind of like an open book exam. One of the things that we do in the class is we usually go based on Sheikh Shadee's book. And I don't know if it's going to be available in time for the class, but if not, I'll be providing the kids with notes each week so that they can review and go over it with their parents as well, inshallah. All right, so for the beginner class, what we do is we go over what is fiqh, just kind of give them an example of and a little bit of an understanding of what that means. And I think it's important to kind of just define it a little bit for them because it sounds like a fancy word and they don't always know what exactly is this. Foundations of faith. So we do go over Hadith Jibreel and we do Iman, Islam, and Ihsan, and go to give a little bit of an overview with that. Then we go over the 6 pillars of Iman and what exactly it is that we believe as Muslims and what we're required to believe. We have the 5 pillars of Islam, of course, the conditions of taklif or accountability, the fiqh of tahara, and the fiqh of prayer, which is actually a big bulk of the class, and it's probably the most important topic that we go over. There's a lot of detail in fiqh of salah because we do go over things like Jum'ah, Janazah prayer, the conditions for each, and there's a heavy emphasis on things that are obligations, things that are nullifiers, things that are sunan, how to correct ourselves in certain situations. The advanced class is going to review all of that, and we'll probably do that primarily through Kahoot. It's one of the things I like to do is I kind of include it in the games. They review these topics, and it kind of keeps them sharp. And if there's something, one of the things I also do is if you've ever seen the Kahoot, when you play the game, when you get an answer wrong, you see like, okay, all the different options, and I try to explain why this is the wrong answer, why this is the correct answer. So while I'm actually going through the game, I provide commentary. So we go through and then we move on to the next question. And then we're going to be doing new topics as well. So we're going to be doing in the next section, it's going to be fiqh of fasting, fiqh of zakah, fiqh of hajj, fiqh of food, and manners of a Muslim. Now, if your children have never taken fiqh formally before, I would recommend starting off with the part 1, because one of the things I did notice in my last class is even though a lot of children had gone to Islamic schools, there were gaps in some of their understandings, and it was good to have an opportunity to elaborate a little bit more on it. So I definitely recommend, if you haven't taken it, if their children haven't taken it before, to do that. If you have older children who would be interested in sitting in and just kind of listening, this is a great review. I mean, honestly, I recommend for everyone, every couple of years, everyone should review fiqh, because it's one of those things where there's always little things that slip through the cracks and you kind of forget about them. But I definitely think the only downside for older kids listening in is that this is a PG version of fiqh. So there are topics of puberty and ghusl and things like that that I don't go over. But if you let me know if there are older kids who, you know, are just following along with us, I might be able to provide maybe a little bit of notes or anything for some of the topics that we you know, glance over. But I do think it's important that, you know, kids, you know, I know it's like a dry topic. It's not necessarily the most fun for kids, but it's really, really important. And again, it's one of those things where we build. We start off one year, we're, you know, doing these subjects. They might forget and remember 50% of it. And then the next time they take it, they remember a little bit more. And the next time a little bit more. So, I mean, that's the kind of the methodology that we're implementing. And in the meantime, we want to have them have a positive interaction with the topic in the class. All right. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me if you have specific questions during the class. If you're parents and you want more information and you feel like you don't understand something, or you want to review something with your children and you're struggling, you know, just please reach out. Like, this is a joint effort. I highly recommend that the parents, you know, keep on top of what their kids are learning. Sometimes it's good review for the parents even. So if you have any questions, again, please reach out to me. I think that is it for my end.
Thank you very much, Hala. And this class, mashallah, I've seen students and heard back from parents they benefit a lot from the thorough review that occurs every week. That's the most important part. And I think, like, the most important other important part that you mentioned is gaps. Many people have come to me, oh, I don't want to take wudu again. And I have some students who are famous for this. I can't believe we have to study wudu again. And I did it already. Okay, well, name me everything that breaks wudu. And they can't do it, right? Or name me the obligations versus the sunan, and they can't do it. So very much like tajweed, people think that they're only learning tajweed when they're reciting, and not realizing it's when they're listening. Same thing with fiqh. There are gaps in everyone's knowledge.
A lot of gaps. Like, I mean, I definitely noticed that, like, there are even, you know, adults who don't know anything about sajdat as-sahw, and like, that's important. Or, you know, they'll think you can make wudu with pool water, or, you know, something like that. You know, it'll be something simple, but it's one of those things where, like, these are such, especially tahara and salah, like, so important, because it's like our daily lives, like 5 times a day. This is like your salah counting. So I think it's really important that, like, we review, especially fiqh of salah, like, every so often. And again, if the parents have any questions about something that I'm teaching, or they want, like, further elaboration on something, I'm happy to, you know, to provide it. And again, I know, like, there have been a number of parents who've reached out about older kids. And my older son is 14, and he sits in sometimes and he listens in. And I know that there are things that are missing, and I fill in those gaps myself. But it's still, the majority of the information is something that any age can benefit from, inshallah.
And for students that took Hala's class last semester, they basically would take the advanced class.
Yes. So if you've taken either with myself or Brother Ali, or I believe Sister Youssra also taught it last semester. So if you've taken classes with any of us, inshallah, I would recommend taking the advanced class. If you haven't, then I would really recommend starting off from the very beginning. Again, it's going to be a review, but there will be gaps. I almost get, like, almost all the kids in my last class had gone to Islamic school, and I still noticed that there were gaps in what they knew. So definitely recommend that, inshallah.
All right. Thank you very much, Hala. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. And that basically brings us to an end. And that's every class has been covered, mashallah. 7 classes, 2 scholarship classes, and then 5 foundations class. I would say actually tajweed straddles both, but it's categorized as foundation. So again, just to do a quick recap, the way that Arkview works is that it's an entire bundle that's divided into 2 branches: foundations and scholarship. Of course, scholarship consists of the foundations. The Arkview is the foundations track, and Arkview Plus is the scholarship track. You sign up one time, one subscription, constantly. You'll be able to get all of the age groups and all the classes. And then when we're not in term time, when there are no live classes, that's when you will catch up to pre-recorded classes. So not all the classes that are here are going to be just the live classes. Some classes have been pre-recorded without any students, without any audience, and uploaded. You could take all of those in the break. And then once the semester starts again, you sign up again for the semester. For those who were taking the live class at MBIC, which we call the Awailim Scholarship Track, Arkview Plus equals Awailim in terms of registration. But all you need to do is just let us know so that we prepare a lunch, because we need to know how many people to prepare the lunch for. But again, that's for next fall. We could kick that down the road until we get to next fall. Thank you all very much for attending. MashaAllah, we had a number of people attending the entire hour and 40-minute session orientation. Jazakumullahu khairan. And again, I'd like to thank everybody from the back end. Shiza worked on the back end with Youssra, with Aisha Kadbai, Aisha Khwaja, many other people, Fatima, Abdurrahman and her crew, Lamia Rashid, all of the marketing side and the programming side. So many people from the back end. Jazakumullahu khairan to all of you. May Allah Ta'ala always keep us sincere. May Allah Ta'ala always keep us humble. And may Allah Ta'ala always keep us upon Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah and in the service of the Ummah of Islam, in the humble service of knowledge and of the Muslims. Jazakumullahu khairan. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wal asr inna al-insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa aminu salihat. Wa tawasaw bil haqq. Wa tawasaw bil sabr. And lastly, we begin next week. And if you have any questions, just email myarkview@safinasociety.org or info@safinasociety.org, or go to the website, safinasociety.org. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.